Salutations, my friends. I'm the Mighty Mander. Let's talk about some video games. I've been playing some. I've been playing Max Payne 1 and 2, and I would like to ramble about these games that I find really cool. And hopefully, you guys will come along with me on the ride. So let's get into it. Recently, I played through a game called El Paso Elsewhere. It's a bullet time shooter slash dark romantic thriller by a developer called Strange Scaffold Games. I liked it a lot. I really liked the story. I thought the story, the presentation, and the characters were all very well done. And the gameplay, I'm sure quite intentionally, reminded me of Remedy's original duo of Max Payne games. I personally have a lot of history with Max Payne 3, but a lot less with the first two games. I played the first one a while back. I thought it was pretty good. But up until now, I've actually never played Max Payne 2. All the hype around Alan Wake 2 when that was releasing really got me thinking a lot about Remedy in general. I even let my inner musical theater nerd out of the cage for a little bit to learn a little bit of the Herald of Darkness dance because I thought that looked like a lot of fun. And it was. I was really into it. But I held off on buying Alan Wake 2 because I have a problem that basically makes me want to catch up on everything that I missed before I jump into the new thing. So I'm like, oh, Alan Wake 2, that means I gotta play Alan Wake 1. And I'm like, well, but they got an interconnected universe, so it's like, not only do I gotta play Alan Wake 1, I gotta play the Max Payne games, I gotta play Quantum Break, I gotta play Control again. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna go all the way back, almost to the beginning of Remedy's history, and we're gonna revisit the original Max Payne to see if that shit still holds up. Spoilers, it does. So when I say the beginning, I mean other than Death Rally. Max Payne was actually Remedy's second game after Death Rally was developed in a basement by the original Remedy team, including writing from the man himself, Sam Lake. Sam Lake would then move on to become the head writer of Max Payne 1 and 2, as well as a bunch of Remedy subsequent games. He's kind of become the mastermind behind the whole Remedy interconnected universe, as well as a bit of a superstar developer that you might have seen drinking coffee stoically on social media. That's Sam Lake. He seems like a pretty cool guy. After Death Rally, Remedy would go on to pitch their next game, a third-person action shooter known as Dark Justice, which through several iterations would become what we know as Max Payne. This game fucking rips, man. The game is just fun, and at its core, it's really simple. It's 99% shooting. The rest is some light platforming, pushing buttons, very verbose neo-noir cutscenes delivered in comic panels, and some in-game cutscenes as well. Mostly, though, you're just shooting a whole bunch of dudes with a wide variety of weapons. Some of these weapons can be dual-wielded, some can't. The dual-wielding and the chaotic shooting combined with the slow-motion mechanics really cranks up the John Woo Matrix lobby shootout vibes of this game, which are immaculate. Bursting into a room, shoot dodging, spraying and praying with some SMGs or some dual pistols or the M4 that you get later in the game, the assault rifle, is incredibly fun. Those are probably my favorite weapons in the game. That's where a majority of the satisfaction in this game comes from, is the slow motion shooting. Without it, the game would feel very bare bones. I really think it is kind of the mechanic that makes the game. It's a very versatile mechanic as well, like the slow motion in general. There's a couple different ways you can use it. So you've got your regular bullet time, which you can just slow down time, make precise shots, but you've also got shoot dodge, which is the slow motion dive. So basically hitting one button will initiate a dive and will kick the game into slow motion. So it's a less resource intensive way of using your bullet time. Like, it doesn't drain your meter. It still lets you make precise shots, but you are locked into the dodge animation when you do it. Like, you have no choice but to go through with the dive, land on the ground, and then you have to take like a second or two to get up before you can start shooting again. This leads to some very quick explosive encounters where you just burst around the corner, take out a group of dudes, and they all hit the ground at the same time as you. You come out of shoot dodge, shells hit the ground, the bodies are just starting to kind of hit the ground and stop rolling around, and all of a sudden you're getting up and moving on to the next room or the next shootout. It's supremely fun. It is incredible. You can use bullet time as a crutch and really kind of drain it, you know, slowly as you like take out individual enemies with precise shots, but that drains your meter and you might not have enough bullet time available when you really need it. The other thing that really stuck out to me was the immense level of detail put into Max Payne 1. Everything from the bullets being actual projectiles that have to fly through the air to reach their target. Guns have slides that eject casings when you fire, and those casings hit the ground and you can see them bounce all over the place. Muzzle flashes light up the environment when you fire your gun, and there's just tons and tons and tons of interactable physics objects everywhere. You go up and hit the action button on some kind of stationary object, and chances are there's a sound effect or an animation or something. A vending machine will provide you with a refreshing drink. A sink will fill if you turn it on, fill up to the top, and then it won't overflow. And when you turn the sink off, it will slowly drain. You can see characters' breath outside in the cold. It gives the game a remarkable sense of place when you're playing it. Like, each environment feels, even though they're pretty empty, they all feel fleshed out and lived in, right? Because it's like, oh, this feels like a rundown apartment building with a bunch of stuff everywhere that I can just fuck with. And it's like, that's fun. That's fun. You know, just go up and open a cabinet, see if there's anything in it, find some hidden painkillers, find an extra gun that you didn't know was there, you know, find a phone, you just hit it, plays a voice message that was left on that phone.
We come to you now live from the crime scene.
Who is this?
Right back at you.
It's just fun stuff, man. There are also a ton of fun in-universe Easter eggs. The most prominent being the TV shows on the in-game TVs. My personal favorite of these are definitely the period melodrama piece, Lords and Ladies.
My lady, I beg of you, I must know. I would rather die than not know.
Yes, my lord, we should both be dead, for this shame is too great for the living. My lord, I am your long-lost sister.
So between all those Easter eggs and all these physics objects and all this fun details that are in this environment for you to run around and just play around in, it makes me appreciate the painstaking effort needed to implement all these details. It makes Max Payne feel special. It makes it feel like a game that was crafted by people that were having fun. The confident writing and execution on their vision, the character of Max himself, the palpable atmosphere of all the environments, you know, the neo-noir atmosphere of the streets and the rundown interiors of the buildings, well-implemented in-game cutscenes and camera movement during gameplay. Like, you know, when you finish off an encounter and it does a slow motion, you know, the guy falls down and it's like a real cinematic and cool. It makes me excited to check out the rest of Remedy's games because it really feels like, even in this first game, that they're just in their bag. Although, one thing that really kind of compromised my experience playing this game, and that is the save system sucks. This is definitely a remnant of a bygone era because the save system, the checkpoints are just not forgiving. There is, like, technically, I guess, an autosave at checkpoints, but it's like very sporadic. And you got a quick save. There's a quick save on the pause menu. You go pause, you quick save, and you do that a lot. Do it after every environment, and do it every time you enter a new room before you take on some kind of platforming challenge, because otherwise you will die and you will lose progress, and that sucks. There's no way around it. Losing 20 minutes of progress because you missed a platforming jump from one ledge on a building to another ledge on a building, and you fell and splat on the street, and you go back to the beginning of the level, that sucks. It just sucks. It's not necessarily the game's fault, because that's just the way games were back then. Save systems weren't really as advanced as they are today. We just, you know, I'm not trained. I don't have that Pavlovian training to save all the time anymore. I just don't. Autosave is a thing, and it's usually very good. But you go back to play the whole game, and you're taking a risk. So just be aware of that if you decide, even on Xbox, even on modern platforms, the save system will still kick your ass if you're not on top of it. So just be on the lookout for that. And there's only one aspect of the gameplay that I think is just like not very good, and that's the platforming. Like this game was not built for platforming, and you can tell it's put in there just to kind of break up the pace. Usually it's not bad. It's just to get from one area to the next, right? Like you got to jump a ledge or, you know, climb something. But there is one level where it focuses more on this kind of platforming, and it is the notorious Blood Trail Nightmare levels, which are not very good. Gameplay-wise, it's not great. Story-wise, it makes a lot of sense that you're in Max's head, and it's this very disturbing place. But gameplay-wise, it's a bit rough. It's a bit of a jagged edge, and it has not aged as well as the core shooting mechanic of the game. And we've talked a lot about gameplay, but the other thing that makes up a majority of Max Payne is the story, the narrative, right? The character of Max Payne himself, what he's going through, what he's saying, what he's thinking, and I hesitate to say plot, because the plot is kind of just a vehicle to move you from one group of guys that you've got to murder to the next, right? Max is a very singular character in the first game. He's basically just on a warpath of revenge, and that's about it. So it's less about plot and more about the actual writing of the scenarios, the art design of the comic strips, the atmosphere of the levels, the performances of the voice acting. The game is absolutely dripping with this kind of modern neo-noir style. Everything from the way Max is dressed, the dark leather, overcoat, to his overly descriptive inner monologue that has a really killer metaphor and simile game.
I came in from the cold and the dark. Outside the city was a cruel monster. I was in an all-night diner, downing cup after cup of coffee that tasted like engine oil, when a new message from BB got me back on the killer track. And then it was all over. The storm seemed to lose its frenzy. The ragged clouds gave way to the stars above. I was a ninja. My kung fu was strong. I wasn't hitting anybody. At best, I was Superman on Kryptonite about to fall through a skylight, down to where it was all going down.
The cold, snowy city setting to the dank and dirty interiors of apartments and parking garages. Max Payne has a very distinctive sense of identity to it. It knows what it wants to be, and it executes on that with confidence. Like I said, the plot is pretty straightforward. It doesn't have a ton of twists and turns, save for, one significant twist that I think makes sense for the plot. It's mostly, like I said, the straightforward revenge warpath, with Max slowly losing his sanity as he kills more and more people that may or may not have to do with his wife and child's murder, and kind of unraveling this corporate conspiracy as he kind of finds out what really happened. Most of the story is delivered in these comic panels, which are really cool. I really like the way these look. Like you can tell that they were taken based on reference of real life, like studio photo shoots, right? So they had it's Sam Lake in the Max Payne costume. I believe it's his mother playing Horn, Nicole Horn. I believe that's Sam Lake's mother. But the way that they kind of put this painterly style on top of them and really focus in on the action and put the speech bubbles in there and present it in these kind of 3 vertical strips, I think it's a really great way of presenting the story back for 2001. There are also a bunch of in-game cutscenes, which I find pretty cool. Those feel very ahead of their time. They'll give you an establishing shot or something that is relevant to the plot of the mission, but not significant enough to kind of jump away to a comic panel. Max himself is a pretty dark dude, but he has a sense of humor that I can't help but chuckle at. He really delivers some banger lines in there.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Frankie the Bat Niagara.
Niagara, as in you cry a lot. He had a baseball bat and I was tied to a chair. Pissing him off was the smart thing to do. He was trying to buy more sand for his hourglass. I wasn't selling any. I had a bullet with Nicole Horn's name on it. I had 10,000 bullets with the hag's name on them. She had ultra-high-tech security systems, enough mercenaries and weaponry to start World War III. There was no fear.
All of these lines delivered masterfully by the late, great James McCaffrey. McCaffrey's performance as Max Payne is one of my favorite video game performances. I think he just got that character and really got the delivery of it. It's just an iconic video game performance, man. And I think it really did a lot to establish the character as being as iconic as he is. There are a couple aspects of the game that make it feel like the team is still figuring stuff out, but overall, I'm struck by the confidence and tight execution of this game. And again, the sheer fun of it. On a pure arcade level, the sheer fun of bursting into a room with 2 guns and just clearing it faster than any of the enemies have to respond, and just hitting the ground and hearing all those shells drop. It's just great. It's just such a cool game. Other than a couple rough edges like the remarkably unforgiving save system, which is a bit strange to get used to, most players could hop right in and have fun with this game. Like straight up, not that its opening is particularly fun, mind you. It's actually an extreme and immediate downer. But once you get past the opening, it's fun as hell. It's not too long, and the best part is the sequel is leagues better. Okay, so the first Max Payne game is good. As I've recently found out from playing it the first time, the second Max Payne game is a fucking superstar of a game. Holy shit. What a good game this is. So remember how I just said Max Payne 1 felt like Remedy kind of getting in their bag a little bit. They're still figuring it out, but you could tell they were onto something. Max Payne 2 feels like Remedy fully in their bag. The improvements jumping from Max Payne 1 to Max Payne 2 are immediate, they are numerous, they are vast. The first game had some silly elements that clashed with the darker tone of the narrative a little bit. Like, you know, even though it is such an iconic detail, right, and something we all look back on fondly, like the Sam Lake face is a little goofy, right? It clashes with the tone just a little bit. And Max Payne 2 doesn't have that clash. It's a much more straightforward, kind of straight-faced game. And in some ways, like, you know, we can look back on Max Payne 1 with a little more fondness because of its more tongue-in-cheek kind of tone. But I was just impressed with the direction that Max Payne 2 took with its story and with its characters and with its tone. All these characters, particularly the kind of central characters of Max, Mona, and Winterson, the new cop character, it feels like a kind of tangled web of relationships and secrets. And they're all keeping information from each other, and they're all interfering with each other's investigations, and it feels like a proper noir tale. Max is done with his continual warpath killing spree because the murder of his family is kind of a buttoned up issue. Like, he solved it. We solved it in the first game. Like, that event is in his past, but he can't move on from it, so he's just kind of stuck in this grief, and he has to just keep doing his job. He's back on the job. He's back being a cop. No more undercover DEA stuff. This is like, no, Max is a detective trying to solve a murder. He's continually making bad, selfish decisions in Max Payne 2, basically purely out of his own self-interest. And in my opinion, that makes him a much more interesting character. Like, there are some, like, legitimately good twists in this game, I think. Some really surprising moments. It's also got some slightly more creative gameplay than the first game. In addition to shooting generic mobster goons and, you know, government shadow men, you've got, like, a mysterious faction of cleaners. There's just these guys in these cleaning uniforms that show up at every crime scene, and you're like, what is the deal with these guys? You know, so they're like a mysterious faction that it's unclear who they're working for at first, which is like a change of pace from the first game, where it's like you pretty much always knew who you were shooting. But now it's like you show up at a place, and it's just these guys in these cleaning uniforms, and you have no idea what the hell's going on. Mona kind of becomes the main motivator for all of Max's questionable decisions throughout the course of the game. The plot presentation and cinematography is much improved from the first game. The in-game cutscenes are more elaborate, more stuff happens. The presentation of the comic panels is paced in a way that is much more cinematic and dramatic. It's not the most sophisticated narrative ever, particularly in its treatment of characters other than Max. Like, the female characters in the game don't get particularly well treated, you know, but they are still interesting components of the story, and I personally found the narrative a lot more compelling in the second game than the first. Gameplay wise, Mona also adds a significant element to the game because she becomes a playable character at one point. For a chunk of the game in the middle, you're actually playing as Mona, and then you're switching back and forth between Max and Mona through several missions throughout the rest of the game, before ultimately kind of getting back to Max's sticking with him for the end of the game. The escort mission is a little bit annoying, but it is a fun change of place. You know, you're like, oh, okay, I'm playing as Mona, and I'm witnessing events that I just saw as Max, but from a bird's eye view, and that's kind of interesting. Other than that, the gameplay just feels refined as hell compared to the first game. It feels like one of those sequels that is the epitome of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just add some slight variations on the bullet time, make the shooting feel like 10% more responsive and weighty, and adds some cool-ass John Woo slow-mo reload flares. And there you go, you got your sequel. Remedy's action set-piece design in Max Payne 2 is kind of on another level. One of the later levels where you're rolling through Alfred Woden's mansion, it feels scripted and paced just like a GTA or Red Dead mission. Moving through areas, communicating with the character that is kind of teaming up with you. In this case, it's Max and Mona, right? You'll go into separate rooms, you'll split up, and you'll come back in, and Mona will be up on the second floor. They'll exchange a couple lines and then move on. It feels very well scripted, very well paced, very exciting. I feel like Rockstar probably learned some stuff from Remedy and these action scenes, because it really feels like a precursor to a lot of more modern, particularly like Red Dead missions. That characteristic weirdness that's really representative of the first game is largely absent from the second game, at least the main plot. That weirdness is kind of reserved in the second game for all the meta-narrative in-game Easter eggs, like the TV shows, and sometimes those worlds will bleed together into the actual levels, like the extensive Captain Baseball Bat Boy level, or the Funhouse level that's based on like an in-universe TV show. The Captain Baseball Bat Boy mission in particular, where you have to escort this large, squeaky mascot costume that's got a bomb in its head. It's another escort mission, oddly enough, but it is very funny. And if you miss Sam Lake's face, you're in luck, because he's all over the TV shows. He plays a lot of the TV characters. He plays both the titular Lord and the lady's mother in Lords and Ladies. So you've got like this sneering, like, old lady Sam Lake, which is very funny. Like, he's making the like, oh, old lady face. And the seemingly unhinged, insane detective character in the noir detective show Address Unknown, which is basically like an analog for the Max Payne 1 version of Max Payne. Overall, I just had a really, really great time with Max Payne 2. It stuck with me a lot more, I think, than the first one, because both because I had previously played the first one, so this one made a lot stronger of an impression because it was a first impression, and also because I was just so impressed with how modern this game feels. And it just has some banger lines, man. Like right at the end of the game, when after Max goes through this whole ordeal, and it's just the very end of the game, and he goes,
I had a dream of my wife. She was dead, but it was all right.
Like, fuck. That line hits like an anvil after marathoning these two games, where it's all just Max is like, how do I move on? How do I move on? It's not all right. I can never be all right again. I really loved it. I thought it was great. And it's now one of, like, Max Payne 3 was already kind of one of my top favorite games, and this is now up there as well. I firmly can say now that I'm like, okay, the Max Payne trilogy is like in my gaming hall of fame. Revisiting Max Payne was fantastic. Discovering Max Payne 2 in particular was such a fun experience. I am a little concerned going forward that Remedy's reputation shifted more away from the kind of fast-paced, fun shooting that I really enjoyed about these games. That was like the main thing that stuck out to me, and more into the kind of meta-narrative weirdness. But hey, I'm fully on board for this ride at this point. Maybe that's something I'm gonna have to set my expectations for. Maybe I will find other reasons to love it. Regardless, I'm very excited to keep going with this and jump into Alan Wake and eventually get back to Control and Alan Wake 2. I'm like really excited to get to the kind of like really when they're getting back into the interconnected universe stuff with Control and Alan Wake 2. So I'm really excited to get to those games, because those games are really weird and I really want to get into the weirdness. Anyways, that's been my experience revisiting the first two Max Payne games. I thought this was a really, really fun experience, and I highly recommend both of these games, man. The Xbox ports are the ones that I played, so I played them on a modern console, on an Xbox Series X, and they both have a lot of quality of life improvements, but the second one in particular, it's fully widescreen. Like, it still obviously uses the old models and the old graphics and everything, but it's upscaled so that it runs at a really high resolution, rock solid 60 frames per second, and it just works really well on an Xbox controller, man. It just feels great. And it's a good game, and I recommend that you guys check it out if you can pick it up for cheap on the Xbox store or go pick it up on PC. So yeah, that's been my experience with these two games. I had a great time. I'm looking forward to more Remedy stuff, and hope you guys are taking care of yourselves out there. Hope you guys are having a wonderful year, and hopefully I see you soon. Anyways, as always, I've been the Mighty Mander, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out, my friends.